Hi there, and welcome to this special bonus episode of Behind Your Eyes. In the month of May, I specifically wanted to pay some attention to Asian women and mental health. It being Asian Heritage Month and Mental Health Awareness Month, I thought it would be the perfect time to let Asian women speak their truth. So that is why this month I'm publishing several episodes with a focus on Asian women speaking up about mental health. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Hi everyone, and welcome to Behind Your Eyes. And in this episode, the lovely Claudia is my guest. So hi Claudia, thank you so much for being here. And would you like to introduce yourself to everyone?
Yeah, first of all, hi Suzanne. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for having me on here on Behind Your Eyes. I'm really looking forward to this episode. So I am Claudia Chan. I live in Toronto, Canada, and I'm a full-time radiation therapist. So we use radiation to treat cancer patients. But on the side, I'm a life coach. After working with me, and I usually work with Asian women. After working with me, they become more confident to navigate through life. So they live free of other people's judgment. And that's my full passion in bringing them that power back into their life. And I'm a mom to a 6-year-old son, and we also live with my husband, and I love dancing tango and salsa with him, and we love traveling around the world. And I just believe that if everyone can do what they love, the world will be so much better. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Well, I always start with the same question, and that is a sincere, how are you doing?
I am actually very excited. Because at the end of June, I'll be going on a speaking competition. So right now I'm working through my script, and it's a lot of my own processing of my own emotions, working through myself to bring that story out. And it's like it has its ups and downs, but I'm really excited to be sharing my message with everyone. And otherwise, like life is just exciting. I'm like 42, turning 43 in July, and I just feel like life is just getting started. So, yeah.
Yeah, I know the feeling. Life starts at 40, yeah.
Yeah, right. It's like don't tell and it's like what Michelle Yao said, don't let them tell you that you're past your prime.
Yeah, it's just starting. Yeah, I'm turning 41 next month, so I know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And it's like this phase of kind of you kind of work through all those stuff and now you're like, okay, well, who am I? And yeah, feeling like at the age of 40, we're just getting started.
Yeah,
Suzanne, it's
absolutely.
like amazing feeling.
Yeah, it's a good place to be, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Well, I would love to know a bit more about your background and your childhood. What was it like to grow up in Hong Kong?
Oh yeah, so I was born and raised in Hong Kong. Um, and we came over here to Canada back in 91. So that was when I was 10 turning 11. So life in Hong Kong was very interesting because there wasn't really much of a life. Life circles around academics usually. And so since I was really young, it's always about homework, it's always about practicing and studying for tests and exams. Very rarely that my mom will let me watch TV or just bring me to the park. So when I reflect back onto my childhood, not that I was never really given time to play, but those play is very limited. And so one of the things that I have been realizing was how much of that invisible competition comes into play as we were young, because within one grade, but there were a few classes, and within each class, you're kind of ranked against each other based on the marks that you get, right? So within one class, there will be a person who ranks number one, two, three, and then to the last person. So it's a lot of those invisible competition that I didn't realize, feeling that whatever I am doing is never enough, right?
Mm.
Because so what that you have got an 80%, right? For example, because there's always someone who is above you. And of course, like there will always be someone above you, but just the idea that because it wasn't um brought into place, like the idea is always pushing, like
Mm.
what else can you do to become better and all of those things. So there's like a very loud internal voice that I kind of grew up with, and it was always whatever you do, it's not the like it's not the best, like what else can you do better? There will always be someone who's above you, so what's the point of trying, right? So it gets to that point where it was just a little bit too much.
Mm.
So after coming to Canada, then everything kind of relaxed a little bit. So that was when my academic kind of excelled more. And then because of that, I'm like, okay, well, everything has to be in books, like, and
Mm.
also because my English is not my first language.
Mm.
So knowing that I like in the back of my mind, I had this belief that I could never project myself as best as like as well as other people. So I had to put in double the amount of work or triple amount the work in order to be to be where other people are.
Mm.
So it was all of these things that kind of gotten me into this rut of like always putting my head down to
Mm.
work on myself, to improve myself, and never getting to where I want. So it was this idea that kind of lived within me for the longest time. So
Mm.
even though deep down, I remember there was this one time, I think I was maybe in high school or in university. There was this one morning I really couldn't get out of bed. And my
Mm.
mom was like, yeah, I know how it feels. And, you're almost there. Just study really hard, find a job. And she was trying to make it sound better on
Mm.
her end. But like in my head, it was like, well, then what's the point, right? If I'm just studying and working hard until the day I die, but like, what's the meaning of life? So that really kind of sparked it. It's like, there must be more in life. But it
Mm.
was this limiting belief that was living in my head that was so strong that even though no matter how hard I tried to come up, it was keep pushing me down.
Mm.
And so it was all constantly with this struggle. And it was a very interesting, and I'm sure it's not just an Asian thing, although it's very prevalent in like Asian people,
Mm.
but like it's like all over the world. But it's like that's that thing that kept coming up for me. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, but there's what I hear is there's a like almost imprinted from a young age that you have to compare yourself to others and always be better than the other. And that must
Yeah.
be really hard on you if you constantly have to compare yourself.
Yeah, yeah. It was like one of the things that my mom always says is, "Oh, you're okay. You're not the best, but you're okay." Like it's like the thing is like, "Oh, I'm just mediocre. I'm okay. As long as I can get by, it's okay, right?" But it gets to a point where it's like, "What do you mean I'm okay?" It's like then, right?
Yeah,
So it was always that thing. Yeah.
yeah, but then you must feel like, okay, then you're never really like good enough or the best at something.
Yeah, it was a lot of struggling through school, even like after I got married, because I always wanted to build a business. So
Mm.
I would build a business. I was like, at first I started with creating my own coloring journals. And then I'm like, oh, it's not what I wanted. And then I jumped to, oh, I built my calligraphy business. Along with it, I did offered engraving. So I was teaching calligraphy and offering engraving. But then to one point I would be like, oh, I'm not interested in that. And I kept jumping until I got into coaching, like the
Mm.
mindset work. And then I realized that it wasn't because I wasn't interested in those things. And I mean, like, I was still interested in them, but it was just the fact that the moment I needed to show up and tell other people that, hey, this is what I do, this is what I offer, this is why I'm good at it, and
Mm.
come and hire me. But then that at that point, it was just like, no, I'm not gonna show up. So
Yeah.
then I thought it was because I wasn't passionate enough, but it was just because I couldn't get over myself to show up.
Yeah.
And that realization was really big on me. I'm like, oh, that is why.
Yeah, we're like too scared to fully step into your power.
It's the
Mm.
showing up because it's like, who am I to show up? Like there are all
Right.
all these other people who are so much better, who
Oh,
could
yeah. Then there's
articulate,
the
right? Like,
comparison again. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
like all of that just lives in you and it just cycles through until you get it, right? So
Yeah, yeah. Until it finally like clicks and like, oh, right, that's why this is happening.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because of course you recognize a pattern when you quit one business after the other at a certain point in time. And then you're like, okay, wait, what's going on here?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it wasn't really until the mindset work that's coming in. That's when I realized that. And because like our brain is sneaky, right? Like when it
Mhm.
comes to fear, it doesn't like to show up as fear. It likes to show up as everything else but fear. It's like all these excuses. At one point,
Yeah.
I remember also feeling like, oh, my son and my husband having a family is taking too much time away. So it's like all this blame and guilt, right? It's like, oh my gosh, I'm like blaming them, but I should be a good mom, I should put in the time. So I don't have time for that,
Yeah.
right? And then it's like, oh, I'm not interested. I don't have time because I have like my full-time job, right? So all of these excuses and stuff
Mhm.
that we use to cover that fear. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and it can also come in ways that we don't even expect it, like procrastination or perfectionism, when we think we
Mhm.
want to do the best that we can, but it's not perfect enough. And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
maybe I should quit because it's not perfect.
Yeah, 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 right. Like all this perfectionism is like, oh, this thing is not good. I remember like when in the beginning when I was doing my calligraphy, I was like, oh, I messed up. I have to restart, right? Because I cannot put it
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I love the quote by Brené Brown. She says, I'm a recovering perfectionist. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's
Oh
brilliant. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Me
Yeah.
too. Me too. But one perfectionist is one thing, but I always said like I was the like master procrastinator. I
Mhm.
like I was the queen of procrastination, and I didn't realize that that was because of so much fear and expectation that I
Mhm.
put on myself. It was just that so that I like put it off until the very end, right?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, until the timing is right.
Yeah, all the like last minute deadline, and it's like crunch time. It's like there's no more room to like ruminate and think about stuff.
Yeah, but how did you go from that place to start to heal and do the mindset work? What was that like for you?
So in the beginning, I didn't even realize that I was doing that
Mhm.
because when I was starting my calligraphy business, that was when COVID hit. And then I thought, okay, well, I found this business coach. So I joined her business program. I was having a lot of difficulty with showing up. And she said, well, if you can't show up, it's because you need to train your leadership or your mindset.
Mhm.
And that's how I started going into the leadership program, training the mindset. And I realized how much junk there is in my head. And I was like, wow, this thing is real. And so that's how I got into my own coaching journey, like my own self-work journey and my own self-love journey.
Mhm.
Um, one of the things that I really loved that really changed my mindset was the fact that we keep comparing ourselves to other people so that like we feel like we're on this line and we kind of have to shove ourselves into this line of self-love, like self-acceptance. And from the point where I keep criticizing myself is like the zero and I love myself entirely, which is 100%. I just keep shoving myself over there. And
Mhm.
it was because of the things that I'm saying to myself. So realizing that I was doing that and I could actually change that was sorry, the realizing that I was thinking that and that thought was what's causing the feeling of inadequacy, of shame, and all those things. And that's why I couldn't do any of the things, because they are all interrelated.
Mhm.
And that was like the biggest reveal to me.
Mhm.
And as I was working through my own mindset, I was having so much trouble in changing my thoughts, right?
Mhm.
Like, I believe it's really like a thought that you repeat over and over,
Yeah.
and then you kind of embody that. And then
Yeah.
I was having so much trouble with I keep believing that I cannot do something, I'm not good enough, and resenting myself, hating myself for not being able to change to a different thought. It's kind of like an absolute thought
Mhm.
to, hey, it's actually a line. And why I say it's a line is because it's a spectrum
Mhm.
from I don't believe in myself to I totally believe in myself. And maybe today I am at 43% of I don't believe in myself. Like, I
Mhm.
believe some, I don't believe in other ones.
Mhm.
And realizing that, hey, today, if I make an assessment, I'm just on the spectrum 43%, and
Mhm.
honoring that, and then say, hey, what else can I do to make it 45% or,
Mhm.
47%,
Yeah.
to tilt myself over there. And then it was really mind blowing to me, because I don't have to get stuck in absolute black and white.
Yeah, it's not 0 or 100. It's okay to be in the middle or be
Yeah.
more or less sometimes. And don't blame
Yeah.
yourself
And
because, yeah.
yeah, definitely. And it's not such a big jump to say I
Mhm.
don't believe in myself to I believe in myself, right?
Yeah.
And the beauty of it is, when I was able to put this thought onto a spectrum, then I could see that I actually can have the possibility of believing in myself,
Mhm.
right? It was same thing as no one loves me, right? I'm not
Right.
lovable, right? I'm
Yeah.
not lovable is 0. I'm totally lovable is 100. Today, I only love myself maybe 20%,
Mhm. Yeah.
And then seeing that, hey, even though today is only 20%, it is possible for me to totally love myself, right? I'm working toward that point. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like, oh, it builds, it opens up that possibility.
Yeah.
And seeing that is like, oh, I can actually work on that. It's
Yeah.
actually
And I can
possible
grow
for me.
steadily. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that was like something that really affected me, because I was like, wow, it's actually possible, and I could do it.
Mhm.
Other people are doing it, because before, when I see other people doing it, it's because I believe I couldn't do it. But after I put this belief on the scale, then it's like, oh, I can do it too, because other people
Yeah.
are doing it. Then, like, if they can do it, I can do it too. I just have to work to tilt myself this way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also knowing that it's okay to be right where I am. Like
Mhm.
today, I'm just like feeling, really crappy about myself, and it's okay.
Right, yeah, because
Yeah.
for most people, it's of course too big of a leap to go through to maybe like 5% to 95%, which
Yeah.
of course makes sense. But it's always good to be happy with where you are, and even if you go from 5% to 7%, it's like okay, there's growth there, and that's something to be
Hmm.
celebrated.
For sure. And it's like so important for the internal celebration, because when I'm going on this journey myself, there are so many times I'm like, I'm not seeing results. And we're
Mhm.
so used to seeing results on the outside, and we
Right.
hang our happiness on the outside. So it's
Mhm.
like, we'll be happy when I get there, right? When I see
Right.
this result.
Yeah.
But it's all of this internal work, that because I don't see an external result, I'm like, it's not working, it's not working. And I'm so down.
Right. Yeah,
And
yeah, we depend
yeah.
on external validation for that happiness when all the inside work only shows up a lot later.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, it's like so interesting, because we are right where we are, and we keep seeing other people's results. But what we
Right.
don't see is all the internal work that they
Oh
had
yeah.
never shown us.
Yeah.
And we can't compare to that, because what's on the outside is really the reflection of what's the work that's happening on the inside. And Suzanne, like I'm gonna tell you, like it takes so much work, and I'm still working on it. And I feel
Oh
like
yeah.
on my journey, I'm just getting started, and it's so far.
Yeah, but it's easy to fall into that comparison trap because
Oh
most of the
yeah.
time, especially like on social media, you see only like the highlight reel. You don't see the downs and all the crying and the
Yeah.
emotional outbursts, or when you're feeling like, oh my gosh, nothing is going right.
Yeah.
That's
And you
not
know what? I'm so appreciative of you putting these videos out there, because it's showing the internal journey, right?
yeah,
Internal journey that no one really talks about,
yeah,
because
exactly.
everyone thinks that they're struggling and they're on their own and they can't share it because they don't know
Right.
how to. And when they share it, they feel like other people start telling them what to do, and they get confused and they start doubting themselves, right?
Yeah.
You know, because like I mean, people are just wanting friendly and want to help, but they don't know how to help. So then they're like, oh, Suzanne, you know, you should do this, you should do that. And then when I tell you this, you're like, oh, I'm not doing that, I'm not feeling that way. And then you
Hmm.
start beating yourself up. And
Yeah.
it's like this toxic cycle of like trying to work on yourself, trying to overcome these things, but feeling like there's no one that you can turn to.
Hmm.
And that's, or even just, you know, need of making sure that everything looks good on the outside, you know, like
Right.
the Asian mentality of like, you know, saving face, everything needs to be perfect. You have to let other people know that you got everything taken care of. Everything is perfect, and
Hmm.
you know, you're
Everything's
on
under
top of the
control.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. So
Yeah.
it's like all of these internal stuff that no one talks about. So
Yeah, yeah, and that's so important because, like I said, you only see a highlight reel on social media, on Instagram and such, but there's so much more work on the inside going on, of course, that you don't get to see, and that's the important part that I want to share, for sure.
yeah, yeah.
Well, and your move to Canada, I would love to know how that switch, how that move was like, and if you also experienced any like cultural stereotypes or racism while you just moved there.
Oh, yeah. So it's very interesting because when I first moved here, I was in the middle of grade 5. So I kind of got inserted into a class in grade 5. And in that school, it was the Chinese girl who was like turning her back on me, right? So
Mm.
and then when I switched school to grade 6, it were the Chinese boys who were kind of making fun of me, and like um and kind of looking down on me because I just came to Canada. And it was a lot of that interestingly enough, that it was like a backwards stereotype, like discrimination going on,
Mhm.
because for somehow, as and I think what happens is somehow when, like back then, because there weren't a lot of Chinese people or like Asian faces, and
Mhm.
so there was a need to fit in. A need to fit in, that means you assimilate
Mhm.
to the culture, right? So anything that is different from the culture itself, like the white faces, like the Western culture,
Mhm.
anything outside of that is not acceptable. So then the kids being kids, that is like, oh, you're different. Like this is what's different for me, and I hated it. And so because this is the same thing that's different for you, so I hated that.
Right.
And so I felt like it was like a backward discrimination, where I actually got bullied by people who were of my own race.
Mm.
And then because of that, I had put away my Chinese identity for the longest time. I had denounced it for the longest time. And it really, like, even though after I started working and I was volunteering for a Chinese organization, we worked with Chinese Canadian youths.
Mhm.
I worked in that in that organization, volunteer in that organization for a few years, but
Mhm.
I still felt like I didn't belong. Like
Mm.
my Asian, like my Chinese culture, I could identify up to a certain point. I could connect up to a certain point, but then I still felt like I don't belong. And it was like I don't belong in the Western culture. I don't belong in the Eastern culture. I just felt like I'm on my own kind of thing.
Mhm.
And that I think that played a lot, especially from the young age,
Mhm.
like the denouncing of our differences in
Right.
order to fit in. And that created a lot of resentment and questions when my parents start like putting their cultural beliefs on me.
Mhm.
And I mean, I still followed a lot of them, but in the back of my mind, I would always be like, why are we doing this? Like, you know,
Mhm.
like it gave me the opportunity to question a lot of things. And that's why I, I, I know that's why I'm here today, because I started questioning a lot of things in the back of my mind. Why is it that we have to do this? Why do we have to do that? And always questioning, not believing that what's passed on is the way.
Mhm.
And I I truly believe that is one of my superpowers, is to question things.
Mhm. Mhm.
Instead of living as if, like, you know, this is how it is.
Mhm.
And I mean, also, like, because I don't personally watch like a lot of the TV dramas on Netflix or anything like that. So that's why, like, I also feel like I don't belong, like, or watch sports. So I don't belong in the Western world because I couldn't connect in that sense
Mhm.
either, right? So the sense of belonging was very huge to me. So when it came to like a few years ago when the anti-Asian hate came out, I was very torn. I
Mhm.
was very torn because that was back when I was doing my calligraphy work. And I felt this urge of, okay, Claudia, if you are like on social media, right?
Mhm.
There is an obligation for you to stand up to say something. And at the same time, I was just struggling along because I didn't even get in connection with my own Chinese identity.
Mhm.
So I didn't believe in a lot of the things that were being said. I felt like, well, that's not me, right? That's not part of me. And I really turned an eye toward that because it was a lot of internal turmoil and
Mhm.
internal struggle when it came to facing that as a reality.
Yeah.
Um, and it was really until recently, after I was doing the coaching work, the internal mindset work, that's when I was like, yeah, you know what? A lot of it came from our cultural backgrounds of not having the ability to speak up because we have been told, especially for Chinese girls, right?
Mhm.
Don't make a noise, just like stay below the radar so that you can live happily, you know, don't like create any noise. And and deep down, like we all just want to have like a peaceful life,
Mhm.
quiet family, and and this hatred toward us is so uncomfortable that we just don't want to look at it,
Mhm. Yeah. It's
right?
better
Like
to
when,
ignore. Yeah.
yeah, it's like it's so strong, and we just feel like we can't do anything. We just want to feel safe. We just want to like, you know, go back to our family and have like be
Yeah.
happy, like do our own wife thing, mom thing, work thing, you know, and that's it, right?
Mhm.
And so like when incidents happen to us, we feel kind of helpless
Mhm.
because of all that upbringing, because of our cultural background, because of it
Yeah.
being in our DNA, right? It's not safe to speak up. Let's just like put our head down and go.
Mhm.
So it's working through a lot of that, coming to terms with speaking up. What does that mean to speak up,
Mhm.
right? And also the other thing that I was struggling with also was because I love to um read Abraham Hicks or like watch Abraham Hicks,
Mm-hmm.
and they always talk about what you focus on is what you have, right? So the
Yeah.
other thing that was in the back of my mind is, if I talk about Asian, like anti-Asian hate, am I going to draw that into my life,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
it's kind of like the struggle between the two is like the need to stand up versus I also don't want to attract those things into my life, because
Mm-hmm.
I still want to see the best in everyone. And yet there are, like, it's the truth that there are things, like ugly things that are happening on the outside. So it was a lot of that was happening
Mm-hmm.
within my own, like, subconscious mind, conscious mind. Yeah.
Yeah. And I saw a quote on your website that I really fell in love with. It says, "We're all magical unicorns born into a chaos society." And how
Mm.
can we as women, but also, of course, the Asian women, connect more to that magical unicorn within us?
So this belief came up to me because I didn't have an image of how to explain it, but in my mind, I just felt like the culture or the society is kind of like breeding the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And even though we are unicorns, we're so special. Like, can you imagine the possibility of us being born, of you, Suzanne, of me? Like, the possibility is so small, and we are born.
Yeah.
And we're so magical. But what happens is it gets covered.
Mm-hmm.
It gets covered. And I just saw it as like, it's like the fox, you put the sheep skin on to disguise yourself. I just feel like we got covered by this cow society. Like the cow society is the universal, you
Mm-hmm.
know, the universal symbol. And I have um no, not offensive, like, when, and I'm not trying to offend anyone who loves cows, but it's kind of like we just have this cow skin that got laid on us. It's like, Suzanne, you have to act this way.
Mm-hmm.
Suzanne, you have to show up this way. You have to laugh this way. You have to say things this way, right?
Right.
And when you try to show up, like when you're trying to get the skin off of you, people are like, no, 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 like, what,
Yeah.
you're crazy, right? You're not being realistic. You're like your head's in the cloud, right? And then I saw the unicorns who had gotten their cow skin off. They're like flying everywhere. They're like, hey, Suzanne, you're special. You can do anything you want. Look, 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 right? Come
Yeah.
and
Look
follow
what's
me.
possible. Yeah.
And then I was like, wow, that was such a strong image in my head,
Mm-hmm.
because all of us have this opportunity that we never saw in ourselves. Like, we just knew that there is like a spark within ourselves, very deep. For some of us, it's very deep.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you can hear that. It's like, what else is there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Other than work, other than family, what else is there? And there's this spark. But then because of life, it just gets recovered back,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's like, it's just our unicorn, the magical dust that's trying to say, hey,
Mm-hmm.
you have so much more. And yet it's a very difficult fight,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you have to break through, like peeling this cow skin that has been on you for so long, peeling it off is a struggle, it's painful. It's like, and yet it's like that's the image I have,
Mm-hmm.
because I just want us to tap back into who we really are. And the thing is, I don't know who you can be. You are the only one who knows.
Yeah.
But I have the tools to help anyone who wants that to happen.
Mm.
So yeah, so that's my analogy of it.
Well, also, my final question is also always the same, and that is, when are you at your happiest?
Sorry, what was the question again?
When are you at your happiest?
When am I actually at peace?
Mm. Or at your happiest, yeah.
Oh,
Mm.
when am I at my happiest? Oh, when am I at, when I'm with my son and husband.
Mm.
it's like just being with them, finding that present moment to be with them. And of course, I'm not saying that my son doesn't act up. You know, there are moments, but always finding the moment, and finding the joy within that moment.
Mm. Thank you so much for today, Claudia. It was
Thank
really
you
a
so
joy
much,
to talk to
Suzanne,
you.
for having me. And thank you so much for doing this again to share our voices, the Asian people's voices, and also bringing mental health into light. People need to hear that. So thank you for
Thank you.
having me on there.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.